5 minutes ago, the Pokrovsk inferno is devouring Russians. The AFU managed to accomplish the incredible. Putin froze right on Erdogan's carpet. Orban is preparing a coup. Hungary will officially leave Russia's camp. Shock. The Russians brutally betrayed their own at a critical moment. The first details: our people caught Kadyrov. The Akhmat regiment fell apart before our eyes. The US has started a dangerous game. NATO is falling apart. All this in our episode, Infernal Point. Urgently, the AFU have pinned down the Russians at Stalovo and in the Pokrovsk direction. You have to see this. After this massacre, Putin's generals are preparing an escape plan. The remnants of the Russian army seem to have finally lost their way. The shock Magyar pressed the enemy and dramatically turned the tide of events. Drones have begun a secret mission. The An-26 has vanished into oblivion, delivering a strike the world has never seen before. -2, Russian ships are loaded with weapons. The first details in the report, coming up next.
A cauldron for the occupiers in Pokrovsk. Analysts from the Deep State Project have reported successes by Ukrainian defenders on the northwestern outskirts of the city. In particular, OSINT sources informed that as a result of a successful operation, enemy forces have been blocked. At the same time, enemy enclaves are still present in the central part of Kupiansk.
The operation began with the establishment of a defensive line, blocking and cutting off the enemy garrison in the city from the main villages. The defense forces took up positions relatively close to Ryadkivka and Kindrashivka and also brought Holubivka under fire control. After that, the area of Mern was cleared. The occupiers' Soviet-era name Moskovka and the northwestern outskirts of Kupiansk itself.
At the same time, the defense forces continue to identify and eliminate the occupiers. The operation is ongoing. As a result of another successful operation by the AFU, an enemy vehicle column was destroyed in the Pokrovsk direction. The occupiers tried to take advantage of the weather conditions and, using armored vehicles, cars and motorcycles, attempted to break through from the northern part of the city to the northern side. But the plan failed. On their way, they were met by fighters from the 7th Air Assault Corps and the 68th Jaeger Brigade. But for the Ukrainian sabotage and reconnaissance groups, the fog actually worked in their favor. Thus, thanks to the poor visibility, fighters from the main intelligence directorate managed to infiltrate the enemy's rear in the same Pokrovsky direction. During a meticulously planned and executed raid, the highly trained and specialized Ukrainian sabotage and reconnaissance group also successfully managed to completely destroy the occupiers' crucial and strategically important command post, rendering it inoperable and significantly disrupting their operational capabilities. In recent days, the destruction of enemy forces has also been marked by the actions of unmanned systems units, among others. The latter are setting incredible records. In just 2 days, their drone pilots struck 2 battalions of enemy manpower. And this is just the beginning. This evening, the commander of the unmanned systems forces is in front of me, and with the call sign, Magyar reported that in just 1 incomplete day, his pilots accounted for 505 occupiers. Moreover, these were paratroopers from the 76th Division who had been redeployed to Donbass.
That's all you need to know about the relentless pressure on the front line. Dobropilsky, Pokrovsky and Huliaipol sectors. The average daily SBS indicator in November was 282. Worms. 8,473 specimens over 30 days. The average daily for 11 days in December is 395 bodies per day. Already 4,325 corpses.
With each passing day, the occupiers are losing not only soldiers but also expensive equipment. Thus, our general staff has confirmed the destruction of another Russian aircraft. The day before, alarming news spread through Z channels from Kacha, a base in temporarily occupied Crimea, where a Russian airfield was struck by a UAV hitting an Anton 26. The Russians also reported losses among their officer corps.
A UAV hit an N-26 on the ground. There are dead and wounded. Another
one to the limit. An alarming piece of news reached the Russian command from where they least expected it. Ukraine's Special Operations Forces, together with the insurgent movement Black Spark, carried out a successful operation all the way in the Caspian Sea. Near the shores of Kalmykia, the saboteurs managed to strike 2 Russian vessels. these were transporting weapons. We're talking about dry cargo ships. The cargo ships Rachmaninov and Askar Sarija, which are under sanctions, and Russia is using them for military purposes.
Erdogan erupted urgently, an unexpected statement about ending the war. At this moment, the world held its breath in anticipation. Putin summons to the carpet, a critical meeting for the Kremlin in Turkmenistan. The dictator is reaching out his hand. Harsh signals coming straight from Ankara. Is Putin flying in to put out the diplomatic fire he himself started? And whose side will Erdogan's scales tip to this time? More on this in just a moment. While in the Holy See, they are trying to find a way to achieve a truce between Ukraine and Russia in Ashgabat, the capital of Turkmenistan, where the International Forum on Peace and Security is taking place. A meeting could occur that might change the balance of power. This is about a potential conversation between Turkish President Recep Erdogan and the Russian dictator Putin.
In an era when uncertainty, conflicts, and vulnerability are sharply increasing around the world, it is more important than ever to take responsibility and strengthen international dialogue, cooperation, trust, and peace. Drawing on our history, geography, and civilizational heritage, we are making every effort to promote the principles of dialogue and peaceful coexistence. We seek to maintain good faith relations and to build a belt of stability and security around us. We sincerely wish above all for an end to the war between our northern neighbors Russia and Ukraine, with whom we share deep historical and mutually respectful relations. Turkey is ready to provide real support to any diplomatic initiatives aimed at achieving a ceasefire and establishing peace, including the Istanbul process.
However, according to experts' forecasts, it is not worth expecting any breakthrough.
These are the critical choices and judgments that must be carefully considered and ultimately made, often involving significant thought and evaluation of various factors before a final determination can be reached. At this very present time. Shipping in the Black Sea is extremely important not only for Russia and Ukraine but also for Turkey. It is quite possible that some economic issues will also be addressed. After all, there is the issue of the South Stream pipeline, which runs through Turkish territory, as well as Akkuyu and the construction of nuclear power plants in Turkey by the Russians. All of this could also be discussed. So it's not necessarily just the military track but also related ones. Related to the military track are issues of economics and energy, which are extremely important for all three sides.
In a private interview with CNN, Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan stated that Ukraine is now facing a difficult choice and that Europe must help official Kyiv make the right decision.
Europe should help Ukraine in making certain difficult decisions together with Ukraine. Indeed, some choices, some decisions are very difficult for Ukraine. But in order to avoid greater losses, that is, for the greater good, it is necessary to eliminate evil here, in other words, the bad. That means choices have to be made. I know this is hard for them, especially the issue of territory is incredibly difficult. May God never let anyone face such a thing.
For Ankara, this is not just diplomatic rhetoric. Turkey is trying to regain its status as a mediator, reminding everyone that it was in Istanbul last summer where 3 rounds of negotiations took place. And that back then, without skepticism, the parties managed to make progress on certain issues. For example, in humanitarian exchanges of prisoners and certain security mechanisms.
This laid the groundwork for a subgroup for negotiations that continue to this day. We are ready to play this positive role. Look, right now the Black Sea has become a battlefield. The war has spread to the Black Sea. Currently, commercial ships and tankers are being attacked in the Black Sea. That is, if the war continues, it will spread to other regions of Europe as well. In other words, God forbid, it must be stopped here.
But can another round of talks bring peace closer in Ukraine? The question remains open. The details of a possible meeting between Erdogan and Putin are still unclear. Neither Ankara nor Moscow is giving direct confirmation, limiting themselves to hints and cautious wording. However, one thing is clear: any contact between them will inevitably concern the topic of the war. And it is important to remember that Turkey has repeatedly reiterated its support for Ukraine's territorial integrity and expects to play a mediating role. Alabas Porta. Shock. Orban is preparing a coup. Putin's plan leaked directly to Budapest. The dictator triumphs. My best friend is getting ready to become president. Something terrible is coming. Hungary is in an uproar. Orban might fall for temptation and lose everything. A blow that the scandalous politician might not be able to dodge. Or will he manage to push it through after all? Moscow, Budapest? And what could this mean for Europe? More on this in the story in just a few seconds. Operation Eternal Power. 15 years as Prime Minister, and that's still not enough.
Our victories in the elections are so big, you can see them from the moon, and even more so from Brussels. In
Hungary, a political maneuver is being prepared that increasingly resembles the Russian scenario. Viktor Orban is a contender for the role of another Putin in the heart of the EU.
It's a very, in my opinion, it's a slippery thing. You can't say that Orban can't be completely pro-Russian. He has to be pro-Hungarian. And in fact, it's no coincidence that his ratings are falling, because today he is too pro-Russian. And in this sense, when Orban completely falls under Moscow's influence, it could further fuel the engine of protests within the country.
The key moment is the parliamentary elections of 2026. Orban's party could lose for the first time in many years. And then a plan emerges to change the constitution and take the position of president.
The reason, by and large, is just one. It's the desire to stay in power as long as possible. For what purpose? In order to steal as much money as possible. And in fact, keeping oneself in power is also quite pleasant. It is quite possible and even likely that the newly established government will thoroughly investigate the clearly illegal and criminal offenses that were committed by him and his closest inner circle of associates while they were in power.
Currently, Hungary is a parliamentary republic where decisions are made by the deputies and the government. Orban wants to change the model of power, making the president the central figure capable of controlling.
This is the absolutely crucial and most important key element that unlocks everything. Decisions. Others are wondering what Brussels will do in this situation and what the people will do.
Orban has long been an ally of Putin, so the question of possible support from Moscow.
The facility, despite various challenges and ongoing considerations, steadfastly remains open for all intended purposes. Its operational status is continuously maintained, ensuring accessibility and functionality without interruption. This sustained availability is crucial for serving the community and fulfilling its mission effectively, reflecting a commitment to uninterrupted service and unwavering dedication to its objectives. And there will be all sorts of different Russian political strategists, as well as propagandists and so on. These individuals who are involved in shaping opinions and spreading information will be present.
How could changes in the system of power affect Hungary?
For Hungary, this would mean a sharp escalation of internal contradictions, and possibly lead to mass protests that could turn into a revolution. If the ratings are falling, it means that Orban's position is not interesting to the Hungarians. If Hungarians prefer a different position and Orban wants to forcefully impose his will on everyone, well, this isn't Moscow, so to speak. And it's unlikely that Hungarians are ready to swallow all of this.
A separate topic is the relationship between Budapest and Kyiv.
Ukraine is not an independent state. Ukraine is not a sovereign state. Are you the ones holding Ukraine together? It's the West that's holding it together. We are giving Ukraine weapons. Ukraine should not behave like a sovereign country.
Orban's role could also influence Ukraine.
Of course, it will have an impact, but for Ukraine, certainly. Because the more Orban falls into the Kremlin's embrace, the worse it gets. Accordingly, he is now already starting to promote the idea that, well, obviously, peace must be made at any cost, and that Ukraine should be divided. In other words, Orban will promote the Kremlin's idea of dividing Ukraine. In my view, that's obvious.
Orban is not raising the issue of expanding the president's role for the first time. During his years in power, he has already changed the electoral rules. And on December 10th, in general, Parliament adopted amendments, which speed up the removal of the president. But at the same time, Orban's official representative called,
It has become increasingly clear that these particular reports which have been circulating, are entirely fabricated. They demonstrably lack any basis in verifiable facts or credible evidence, and their content is unequivocally false. Such deceptive information can have significant consequences, misleading the public and undermining trust in legitimate sources. It is crucial to recognize and dismiss these spurious claims. Tomorrow, there will be an increase in the president's powers. It's clear where this is heading. But again, if we trust the ratings, we understand that Orban will most likely lose the spring elections, and that's why he's already trying to do something about it today.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism, and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
The Russians have hit a new low once again, and now they're selling hope. They show families of missing soldiers blurry photos and for money bring anyone back to life. No one actually cares about the whole trade though. The Russian authorities turn a blind eye and pretend that everything is fine. Discord within the enemy's ranks. Don't miss the first details coming up next.
With the start of the so-called special military operation, funds appeared in Russia that search for Russian soldiers missing in Ukraine. And there are also enterprising Russians who started making money off the deaths of their own countrymen.
Scammers are sending out fake messages on the internet. On behalf of a volunteer from the Defenders of the Fatherland Foundation, they offer to help find missing soldiers from the special military operation in the Irkutsk region.
Fraudsters are widely offering help in searching for missing soldiers from the special military operation. Scammers are creating fake projects to search for Russian soldiers. They extort large sums of money from grief-stricken relatives.
Strangers themselves reach out to the relatives of the missing, posing as members of a search group. They get contacts from various chats and communities. They often invite people to their fake channels or groups. There may be responses on such channels online, but of course they are fake. They publish false responses there to create an appearance of trust. Most importantly, they ask for money for the search, for travel, and for the work of specialists.
These are well-known schemes by now, but here's a new one. So-called independent experts make money off families of the missing and the dead, allegedly confirming for a fee that their husband, son, or brother is still alive.
By the hands, by a single ear, by a completely covered face, by a fingernail. For a certain sum, the experts will confirm to you that this is your soldier in captivity. Even in an African or an Asian, they will find a 99% match with a blue-eyed Russian soldier. This is not just unprofessionalism or a technical mistake. This is outright fraud. When it's obvious to the naked eye that the person in the photo and video is someone else.
Z-blogger Anastasia Kashevarova writes about a new scheme from pseudo-experts. She claims that the so-called identifications are carried out using low-quality photographs. For a tidy sum, experts confirm that this or that Russian is in captivity. The blogger claims that this is pure water. Fraud. Such pseudo-expertise tests are conducted at the Stealth Forensic Research Institute in Chelyabinsk. And judging by the income, the experts there have been working 24/7 lately.
The price for an expert opinion on whether the missing soldier in captivity looks like the person in the photo or video, a hefty 30,000 hryvnias. Most of the money is transferred to the account of the ANO, but there are also cases of transfers by phone number to private individuals. Production has doubled in 2024 compared to 2023. If you compare it to 2022, the achievements are truly astonishing. In 2022, the ANO earned 144,000 hryvnias, but by 2024, it's already over 8 million. There is currently no publicly available data for 2025.
There have even been cases recorded where a family sent photos of soldiers from an exchange, among whom their relative definitely wasn't among them, but the examination confirmed with 99% certainty that the soldier should have been there. As a result, some Russians are making good money off the money of others. For a long time, families are convinced that their soldier is in captivity. And they refuse to believe otherwise, knowing that there is no evidence of captivity except for this pseudo-expertise. Relatives constantly bombard military enlistment offices and military units with demands to officially recognize the soldiers as prisoners of war. Unfortunately, it doesn't occur to anyone that this fraudulent scheme wouldn't have arisen if Russians hadn't been signing contracts en masse with the Russian Ministry of Defense and going off to fight in Ukraine.
It happened. Our guys cornered Kadyrov himself by the scruff of Dondon's neck, the military might of the Russian Federation. That might crumbled. A tough response from our side. Strikes by the Ukrainian armed forces hit the heart of the Kadyrovites. What the Kremlin elite feared has begun. There is no turning back. How did this happen and what surprises are in store? Are about to reach the Akhmat fighters and their leader? Don't miss it. More on this in just a moment.
The Office of the Prosecutor General has officially submitted the case against the head of Chechnya, Ramzan Kadyrov, to court. The wording of the charges sounds extensive. Organizing the invasion, leading illegal armed groups, facilitating aggressive war, torture, and cruel treatment of prisoners. The list is long and, in its own way, telling.
People of Ukraine, where are you looking? Come out and speak your mind.
According to the investigation, the formation subordinate to Kadyrov are part of the National Guard units. The so-called Akhmat fighters actively participated in the assaults on Ukrainian cities and in suppressing the resistance of the civilian population. Ukrainian prosecutors point out that this involves systematic violations of the laws and customs of war. At the same time, it's not just about the fighting, but also about the famous calling card of the Chechen units. Videos about heroism, pre-edited in advance. Hello.
Where exactly are you from? We are originally from Chechnya. We truly love you and we are eagerly waiting for you. Thank you so very much. We genuinely love you and we are patiently waiting for your return.
A separate point in the case is that Kadyrov gave orders to his subordinates that violate all norms of international humanitarian law, including the directive not to take prisoners after the airstrike on the facility in Gudermes. The investigation has also gathered evidence of Ukrainian prisoners of war being used as human shields. And this already sounds like coercion, a specific criminal charge. However, while Kadyrov tries to remain silent in the legal field, in the information space, he does the opposite. His Telegram channel has long turned into a stream of aggression, where wars, threats, and curses replace one another.
One after another. We must not cry when our families need us, when our families need us. The state truly needs us, the president absolutely needs us, so please keep your personal shortcomings entirely to yourself. Today, a person of profound faith, a devout individual, a person who truly loves and deeply respects themselves with genuine self-worth and confidence will not simply sit idly at home, waiting for life to pass them by. He will find himself a suitable rifle, he will find all the necessary things he needs, and then he will go to fight against these truly impure ones, against this insidious Satanism.
Meanwhile, the war has reached Chechnya as well. Ukrainian drones are increasingly striking targets connected to its structures. Footage of recent attacks on Gudermes and other sites within the Republic has spread online. This is an unexpected turn for people who, for many years, considered their region an untouchable fortress. An explosive morning for Kadyrov. Ukrainian drones broke through the much-vaunted defenses and struck directly at the elite towers of Grozny city. It's symbolic that the offices of the Security Council and law enforcement were hit. This is already the second successful attack this week. First the FSB, now the city center. Kadyrov's reaction, as always, is loud. Promises of dark revenge, talk about fascist Ukraine, statements that every strike on Chechnya will have fatal consequences. He even announced that he was ready to pay his fighters for every downed Ukrainian drone.
You've probably all already heard that the Ukro-Shaitans destroyed the military infrastructure of the Chechen Republic, destroyed equipment, the Bapala factory, anything you can think of, but not a civilian facility. I want to say that they did nothing, they only broke some windows. We will respond harshly and our targets will be only military facilities, and you can see how impossible it is to intimidate the Chechen Republic and Russia as a whole.
This public aggressiveness has long become part of his political image. Reactions in the style of "I'll show you, we'll respond." That was a mistake, and they come out every week, sometimes even every day.
We fought, we will keep fighting, and we will continue to destroy this culture. I want to declare, to tell everyone who end
This is happening against the backdrop of ongoing discussions about Kadyrov's health. The internet is abuzz with rumors about his illnesses. Some talk about a serious diagnosis, others about severe flare-ups, and some about the pace at which his appearance is deteriorating.
We all see it. Not just me, but all of us can see the state he's in, how he moves, how he talks. It's obvious that he has not only problems with his pancreas, there are a whole lot of issues because in the latest video footage he literally looks like a zombie.
But no matter how Kadyrov himself looks or how his videos appear, the court will deal with the war crimes. and with those who gave the orders, supported them, filmed them, and posted them to social media set to music.
A sensation from Trump, a decision on NATO has been announced. The US is leaving the alliance. Washington's new strategy has shocked everyone. Europe can't contain its emotions. The head of the White House has thrown everyone off with his statements. Loud declarations that send chills down your spine. Europe is left exposed, the beginning of a split. Is NATO really falling apart at this very moment? And what happens next? We'll talk about this in just a moment. A member of the U.S. House of Representatives, Republican Thomas Massie, has introduced a bill for the United States to withdraw from NATO. This became known from the text of the bill, which Massie published on the social network X.
NATO is a relic of the Cold War. The United States should leave NATO and use that money to defend our own country, not socialist countries. Today I introduce Bill H.R. 65. In
his bill, Massie stated that NATO was created to counter the Soviet Union, which collapsed more than 30 years ago. Since
that time, U.S. participation has cost taxpayers trillions of dollars and still carries the risk of drawing the United States into foreign wars.
This bill obliges U.S. President Donald Trump to officially notify NATO of the withdrawal no later than 30 days after the law comes into force. In addition, the document states that the bloc's original Cold War-era purpose no longer aligns with the national interests of the United States. The bill stipulates that the European members of NATO possess sufficient economic and military potential to ensure their own defense, and it prevents the use of American taxpayers' money to fund the organization's joint budgets. But to fully understand such a statement from this Republican, you first need to know who Thomas Massie is.
This congressman is a rather specific representative from a faction within the Republican Party that is associated with the MAGA movement. He is an isolationist and advocates for minimizing government interference in people's lives. And overall, he supports the idea that the United States should minimize its involvement in any foreign policy activities.
Political scientist Petro Olishchuk is convinced that it cannot be said that this opinion and such a loud statement by Massie can be considered mainstream. In the United States,
however, in the context of the White House introducing a new edition of the U.S. foreign policy strategy, which sparked heated debate not only in the U.S. but also around the world, he is probably trying to somehow use this trend to implement his own vision for the future of the United States.
Reuters, citing sources, reports that last week a meeting took place in Washington between Pentagon officials overseeing NATO policy and several European delegations. During the talks, Washington did not announce any plans to leave the alliance, but it wants Europe to take over most of NATO's conventional defense capabilities, from intelligence to missiles. The deadline set by the Americans is 2027.
Shifting this burden from the US to the European members of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization would fundamentally change how the United States, one of the founding members of the post-war alliance, cooperates with its most important military partners.
In addition, according to media reports, Pentagon representatives were present at the meeting. Thank you. They noted that Washington is still not satisfied with the steps Europe has taken to strengthen its defense capabilities after Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. With
the arrival of Trump, isolationist sentiments are growing stronger. The United States constantly declares that they are not interested in defending Europe in any way, that Europe should defend itself, and that their priorities lie in the Pacific region.
The media reports that American officials have informed their colleagues that if Europe does not meet the requirements, by 2027, the US may withdraw from certain NATO defense coordination mechanisms.
What is unique about this strategy? Although the strategy does not explicitly call for the United States to leave NATO, it clearly states that the US will reduce its participation in NATO programs and that Europeans themselves must take responsibility for their own defense. Overall, the defense of Europe is not really considered an issue for the United States.
At the same time, several European officials have stated that the deadline of 2021 has not been decided. The year 2027 is unrealistic. Regardless of how Washington assesses the progress, Europe needs more than just money. It also needs the political will to replace certain US capabilities in the short term.
We have made it clear that it is necessary for Europeans to take the lead, of course, in the defense of Europe. We strive to work through NATO coordination mechanisms to strengthen the alliance and ensure its long-term viability as European allies increasingly take on responsibility for conventional deterrence and defense in Europe.
But in any case, one thing is clear, there are quite a few questions piling up for NATO. And the Americans themselves have made it clear, things will not be as they were before.
While Congress is not yet ready to vote for the US to leave NATO, this is nevertheless an indicator of a trend that is being observed in American politics. Most likely for now, the United States will not be leaving NATO. But for now, the trend is that NATO is becoming an increasingly phantom-like structure, and the question arises, will the US actually defend its NATO allies? So far, in the context of Trump's actions, all of this looks very, very strange. That's all from me for now. This was me, Darina Hutsakalo, with you. Even more hellish news in our next episode. And in the meantime, don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. See you.